It's fun to look at these old photos. This is a photograph from the Larry King show with John Mayer and Eric Clapton. In fact, Eric called me from Los Angeles. He was hopping on a plane, uh, originally going to be headed back to London, but what happened is Katrina, the tragedy down in the south of the country. So Larry King decided to do a benefit concert for the victims of Katrina, and Eric and John Mayer agreed to meet in New York City. The only problem was they didn't have any guitars. The guitars had been put on a plane and were headed back to London. So the same thing was true with John. John's guitars were packed up in some warehouse. So I got two of my guitars. It was actually over a weekend, so I packed up two of my guitars, including my personal Triple O 28 EC, and headed into New York City and met with Eric and John. And one of the funny stories was that they were practicing, and I had a third guitar and was playing along with them. And Eric looked over and said, "Don't quit your day job."
It's not a silly little moment. It's not the storm before the calm. This is the deep and dying breath of this love that we've been working on.
So John visited the factory, and here's a photo with Chris Thomas, who was my assistant in artist relations. If you look at this photograph, John is so young. He was just barely emerging onto the scene. His management said that he's going to be the next greatest thing, and it didn't take very long for that to happen. John had a D35 Martin guitar that he was playing and that he had recorded with a good bit, but he was interested in an orchestra model. And in fact, the OM28 with herringbone trim was the model that he gravitated towards. As I said, he was pretty young. You can tell by the photograph, but he was so talented, and we were so impressed with him that we decided that we would proceed with a signature model. John loved the orchestra model, the Triple O smaller bodied guitars as opposed to the larger dreadnoughts. This has herringbone trim and a pearl rosette, and John's unique signature at the last fret. At the 12th fret, John is a collector of special watches and vintage watches, and this design at the 12th fret, one of his favorite motifs, inlay design taken from his watches. So this is the first of the John Mayer signature models. This is one of the prototypes, and it was very popular. Sold a lot of these guitars. John always fashioned himself as an artist, and I think he always wanted to be a art student. When we were working on the designs for this, he had very specific ideas. He really loved this idea of bordering the bridge with a band of aluminum. This was one of the most difficult things that we ever did on a signature model. It's not very difficult to cut out the aluminum, but it's very difficult to get it to conform to a three-dimensional contour. So this was a real challenge. The interesting thing is that when there is a significant challenge in doing something, it adds a certain degree of extra value to the instrument and an extra story as well. So we picked up that bordering as well on the headstock. John really wanted he wanted it around the fingerboard too, but we said no. It's hard to say no to an artist. But this was very very special and incorporates a lot of John's specific ideas about what he was shooting for in tone as well as appearance. The other challenge with this model was that John, having done the aluminum, wanted to pick up the color of the aluminum in the decal. Well, we didn't have anything like that, so we had to go to our decal manufacturer and provide artwork for a very special decal. And to my knowledge, it's only been used on the John Mayer models. I don't think that there was a necessity to make extra prototypes for this model. I think we pretty well nailed it. And when we actually presented it to John for his approval, he loved the instrument, and we went on to make a lot of these guitars, and everybody that's owned them has loved them. There's something special, I think, a sweet spot about orchestra models in general. I mean, all the Martin guitars have their own character and personality. The dreadnoughts are big and boomy. The smaller guitars are perhaps better for fingerstyle play. The orchestra model is unique in that it serves both purposes. It's great for fingerstyle, and it's also really effective for rhythm. So I think that's why John particularly liked this model. From day one, John Mayer was so enthusiastic and excited about collaborating with Martin on these projects. As I mentioned earlier, this model was so popular that there was a tremendous pent-up demand for more models. And the result was that we came out with a model called the OMJM, which was kind of a scaled-down version, simplified version of this guitar. It had the 1 series construction with the mortise and tenon neck joint, which saves a little bit of cost without sacrificing any tone. That model was extremely popular, and I don't even know how many have sold to date, but many thousands of guitars in that series, all based on the original orchestra model design.
Who says I can't get stoned? Turn off the lights and the telephone. Me in my house alone. Who says I can't get stoned? Well, who says I can't be free from all of the things that I used to be? Rewrite my history. Who says I can't be free? It's been a long night in New York City. It's been a long night in Baton Rouge. I don't remember you looking any better.
So this was a special project. You know, John gravitated to the smaller triple O guitars. I think while he was over in Japan, he played a Martin Dreadnought, and he was just blown away by it, and decided to proceed with the collaboration for a John Mayer Dreadnought edition, and that's what this is. Beautiful style 45 with pearl inlay at every seam. This one is particularly special. Once again, John had this idea on a style 45 instrument. He said, hey, you know, I always wondered why the inlay has to stop as it's going around the rosette. Why don't you just keep going and having it jump up to the fingerboard and complete the circle? So this was not an easy thing to do. The fingerboard had to be perfectly aligned with the positioning of the top, so that the circle was not out of sync with itself. I was at John's house, and he has this model proudly hanging in his living room. So if he has a songwriting idea, he just reaches for his D45. Well, I'm no Eric Clapton or John Mayer, but I love guitars. We have so many photographs that we've collected over the years. This was backstage. Actually, this was at the Tony Bennett concert. Tony Bennett was one of the favorite artists that John Mayer's father loved. And so we met, John and I met at the concert. John's father was there. We had a guitar for all the different people, including Tony Bennett, and to sign during this particular show. There were some really great people there. Not sure what happened to that guitar, but that's a very special instrument. For me, the best part of working with artists was, establishing a rapport and a friendship, sharing a love of guitars, paying tribute to their contributions to music, and really nice thing for me was that John Mayer and I had a really good friendship, still do. And when I retired from Martin in 2018, John flew across the United States in a terrible snowstorm to participate and perform at my retirement concert. And that was really special. Steve Miller also, of Steve Miller Band, came and performed. And my local friend, Craig Thatcher. There was a lot of very special performances that night. But really happy to maintain a friendship with John and a fairly regular rapport with him.
I've worked on 5 guitars. I'm taking a stab in the dark. Dick, did we work on 5 guitars? 4 or 5 guitars? Hundreds of guitars. Well, yes. Hundreds of guitars en masse. Several different models, and I'm so proud of every one of them. And the greatest aspect of it is that people who don't even like me very much love the guitars that I make. And I find that a beautiful manipulation that's taken place, whereby people have not much a fan of his music, but I gotta say the guitar is phenomenal. You know what I mean?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Luminaries of music played.